Good evening and welcome. This is the February 24th, 2025 meeting of the school committee. Call the meeting to order 5:10. This meeting is being both audio and video recording. I'd like to ask that everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Manny, if you could start us out, please.
Joe Garcia, student representative.
Amy Dolenta.
William Strother.
Gregory Thompson.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Sarah Trulio.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Samantha Blair, Secretary.
Okay, thank you all. I have minutes for approval. I take a motion, please.
I move to approve the February 10th, 2025 executive session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Sarah. Second by Amy.
Yes.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion carries 4-0. Next, please.
Move to approve the February 10th, 2025 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Sarah. Second by Amy. Discussion. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0 as well. Sam, excellent. Succinct minutes. Thank you for those. Being subcommittee communications, Sarah today. William. Nothing for community. No. Good to go. Amy. Manuel.
The only thing I have is Spartanum is March 7th and March 8th next week.
Tickets are on sale. How do folks get those?
At the door.
At the door. Perfect. Are you, and you're in it? Couple
Are you able
acts.
to order them ahead of time or no?
Sorry?
Are you able to order them ahead of time?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Ms. Page?
We traditionally have sold them prior during the lunch block. Honestly, I'm not sure if we're doing it different this year because we do have
All new personnel?
new staff member who's overseeing the process. Obviously, Mr. Kieran retired last year.
Mhm.
So if we were to sell them in person, I would presume it would be next week. I'll see if I can get an update on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned.
Oh, yes, please, Gordon. Yeah.
At your places, you have the insert from the reminder that's design an ad. And if you flip through, I give you all the winners, and out of 54 winners, you have, I believe, 34 that come from the East Long Meadow Public Schools. You have ELPS participating, Long Meadow participating, and Wilbraham participating. And so our students at various grade levels develop an advertisement for a local business, and if they get selected, they utilize the ad not only in this insert, but I believe the company utilizes the ad in other. Which is really neat. I mean, you have winners is for Cardamundi, and then you have many businesses, Long Meadow, and Hamden, Wilbraham represented here. But pretty neat to see 34 of our students represented in print.
Yes, very cool.
I wanted you to have that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Gordon.
Mhm.
Moving forward, we have the 24-25 ELPS mid-cycle school reports.
Okay, before I call up our first school, I did have, since this is already up, we had our beam, the first of 2 days, beam signing. And so we did get some nice crowds this afternoon. I just figured to see them. We had nice sunshine out there. There's Mr. Page writing his signature in bold marker. Couple students started us off, and then people started to really trickle in, which was neat to see. I don't know if this was the track team or is that just a bunch of students? Key Club.
People
Okay.
came through as a big group after their meeting this afternoon.
Which is really cool. And then we had families at various times come through as well, which was neat. So I wanted you to see that. And we continue tomorrow with the beam signing before our topping off ceremony on Wednesday. And so 2 to 4, we're open. Different people are staffing the table out there and the markers, and the beam is right outside. It's a nice experience. Everybody was excited, and it certainly helped that it was a little bit higher temperature out there than we had there. And we actually had sun. covered for tonight, so on your way out, you can't sign it.
I just wanted.
I know, I'm just kidding.
You can sign in a lane if you want.
If you want.
Sneak out there.
With that said, we'll move in with our entire leadership team here, or shouldn't say the entire. I know that there are some who have other commitments tonight that were conflicting. But we start with Meadowbrook and we have our school mid-year status reports. And so Ms. Lodi and Ms. Biden.
Going down.
It's always there before. So our first slide there has to do with attendance of both the sites. As a reminder, we're really focusing on chronic absenteeism. And that is any student who has missed 10% or more of their enrolled period. And we have sent home a communication in the beginning of the school year to families proactively, reminding them of what our attendance policy is. We were provided with lawn signs, but we got ours kind of late in the fall and the ground was pretty hard. So we made the choice to reserve them. And now it's completely frozen and covered in ice. So we're going to put them out in the spring as a renewed focus, just to provide additional reminders about attendance. We've been printing our monthly attendance reports and sending home letters for all students with 5 or more absences. As you can see there, most recently in February, we sent 168 letters home. And then we've also been steadily making referrals to our district care coordinator for students with higher rates of chronic absenteeism. The total number of referrals that we've made has been 17, with 5 of them being for the month of February. If you could go to the next. We've been making steady gains over the past few years, reducing our chronic absenteeism rate from 27.4% in 2022 to 18.4% in 2023, down to 8% last year. We hope to further reduce that this year to 6%. As you can see, we're currently at 10%. And as a comparison to where we were at last February, we were at 12%. So we feel like we're in a pretty good position to be on track with meeting our goal of 6%. The chart that you see at the bottom of the screen is from Panorama, and this represents how our yearly change in chronic absenteeism is broken down by grade. It took me a little while to process this, but a negative number on there is good. And so for kindergarten, you can see we're a -2 over last year, for first grade, -3, and for second grade, -4. So each grade level in and of itself has made improvements. Statewide, I did a little bit of research, and K&K, as well as opposite end near junior, senior year, are 2 of the worst areas for chronic absenteeism. So that's pretty well in line with what we're seeing statewide. For average daily attendance, so popping back up to the top there, we have a goal of, I just lost my spot, sorry. 96%. We are currently at 95.2%. And last year at this time, we were at 94.6. So again, we feel like we're pretty well on track to meeting our goals. Digging deeper into this a little bit, getting to know what is impacting that 10% of students that are having issues with chronic absenteeism right now. That reflects about 47 out of our 479 students. I did remove pre-K from those numbers because DESE doesn't count that towards our chronic absenteeism rate. Of those 47 chronically absent students that we have, 11 of them have been identified to have known health issues that are impacting their attendance, and that includes a range of conditions that are chronic and require more frequent absences from health reasons. We've also had 2 students who have been out for an extended period for surgery and 1 for partial hospitalization. 17 have been referred to the care coordinator. Of those 17, 1 family has directly refused to speak with her. And then 1 consistently no calling, no showing scheduled meetings, and 1 has not returned any calls or responded in any way. 1 additional is working with a grade level counselor because it was really determined that it was more of, they needed access to community services. So we felt that was more appropriate referral, and we've helped with Pam's support to get this student transportation because it was a single mother with a 10-month-old baby and no reliable transportation. So having difficulty getting the child to school. 1 of those sibling already referred, 1 we've met with, and 16 hit the threshold after I made the last round of referrals. So Maggie's going to be a little bit busy next month when I print out the report on Friday. The frequent family vacations and out of country travel also continue to be impacting our attendance rates. We're thinking about taking an additional step of creating a completely different letter to send home to the families who have hit that chronic level. Letting them know about the care coordinator and that the care coordinator will be reaching out to them to provide support. But we're just exploring that. We just started thinking about that in the past week or so.
One of the points that Ms. Lodi just made, your chronic absenteeism rate or number, regardless of whether we identify medical situations where there's legitimate reasons for being out, it doesn't matter. It still gets lumped in there. So you can't separate, although it's good for us to know those things. The unfortunate thing is you can't separate it out, or DESE doesn't let us separate them out. They actually have that data in terms of if we've deemed something medically excused, they have that, but they don't separate it out when they put the number together.
And those 11 kiddos with chronic health conditions are really pretty significant things that are impacting kids. So the second part of our goal has to do with piloting DESA, which is the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment. We had run a round of benchmarking in the fall on that, and our hope in piloting this system is that it will help us better identify student strengths and areas of growth within the social emotional competencies. We chose DESA because it's aligned with both Second Step and CASEL, and it's a strength-based assessment, which is very different than a lot of the other deficit-based assessments out there. Next slide, if you don't mind. This shows our fall to winter comparison for DESA. As you can see, we moved 3% of students from the blue up to the green. I've lost my place on my notes again. I apologize. Up to the strength category. 3% of our 479 students K-2 is 14 students. So I think that's pretty good for fall to winter. The percentages basically break down with 86 or 479 students in this strength category, 355 in the typical category, and 38 in the need category. And then on the next slide, you're going to see a further breakdown of that. So DESA Mini is our universal screener. Everybody gets that. It's a short set of questions. We do that 3 times a year. Any student that was identified as being in need, digging a little deeper, gets the DESA 2.0, and that is a much more in-depth screening of student needs. Some of the students that show up as need on the mini don't necessarily show up as need when you dig a little bit deeper on the 2.0. And you can see in every one of the social emotional competencies, we've seen pretty good improvement from winter administration. I didn't put this up on the slide, but breaking it down just so you know what our interventions look like. In the fall, 12 kindergarten students qualified and were picked up based on our DESA results for small group instruction. We were able to, after the winter administration, discharge 5 of those 12 students, so just under half of them, because they'd made enough progress where they were not showing up as need. And we were able to pick up 2 additional students who didn't show up as need the first time, who did the second time. For first grade, that was 14 qualified based on their DESA scores, 10 were picked up. The others were not picked up because they received support from our SEL or social skills or autism programs. We still screen them just so that the teachers have the information to work off of. We discharged 5, so half of the students again, and we were able to pick up 2 new. And then for second grade, 14 came up on as qualifying. We picked up 9. 3 of them were not picked up because they received support from other programs. 1 student moved and 1 family declined the support of the counselor. And then we were able to discharge 3 and pick up 4 new students for the next round. So we feel like we're sitting in a pretty good place with our SEL interventions right now. We were able to do a lot of that because of the addition of the third counselor this year. So that's made a huge impact. And our counselors really feel like their ability to get in and do those second step lessons weekly instead of just for 10 weeks is making an impact for the kids. To teaching and learning.
Okay. So unfortunately, our second round of benchmarking assessments begin next week, so that data is not available. But we do have progress monitoring data as we talk about our map right now. We use the Universal Screener for Number Sense, a USNS, and it's an interview-based assessment evaluating foundational number sense skills. So it assesses counting, numeral identification, and basic operations. And this helps us identify learning gaps and needs for intervention. So for kindergarten, in December, 151, which are all the kindergarten students, were assessed using the USNS. 10 students were identified for math intervention, so they scored basic or below. And then teachers could also recommend additional students for assessment that did not, they weren't flagged on the USNS, but they were seeing some issues in the classroom. And in first and second grade, we looked at the students who were already receiving the intervention. They were reassessed. And then teachers identified additional students for screening and they were assessed. And students in that group, the ones who the teachers identified, were given a portion of a math recovery assessment just to get a deeper understanding of their skills and to figure out what types of intervention they need. The first grade, 21 students were assessed. 4 made enough progress to exit the intervention. 7 continued and 8 new students were added. In second grade, 23 students were assessed, 2 exited intervention, 11 continued, and 4 new students were added. So the next steps for math would be our March benchmark assessments next week. And then after that, we'll hold data meetings with teachers, coaches, interventionists, administration, and we're going to collaboratively look at that data. Our coaches will facilitate the process. They'll use protocols to analyze student data and strategically group the students based on their needs from the assessments and go into those targeted intervention groups. If you go to the next slide, please, we'll talk about ELA, literacy.
When they're in intervention, what resources are the educators using? Is it from Math Recovery or is it more from us?
The Bridges program is,
That's connected to Math Recovery?
yeah, okay. Are we ready? Okay.
I think I have the literacy up.
I'm also blind. So the assessment tool we use again is DIBELS, Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. That's used for our progress monitoring. So in December for kindergarten, we had, again, all 151 students were assessed. 40 students scored in strategic or intensive categories. Strategic is some risk of falling behind, and intensive is at risk and requiring targeted interventions. Those 40 students were further assessed using the QPS, Quick Phonics Screener, and Hegarty assessments. So 19 students were identified as needing intervention in reading in kindergarten. In first grade, 89 students scored strategic or intensive during the fall benchmarking period and were progress monitored again in December using the DIBELS. Of those 89 students, 70 students were making sufficient progress. 19 students underwent additional assessments using QPS and Hegarty. And then the intervention adjustments, 18 students received intervention in the fall. 7 were able to exit intervention, 11 students continued intervention, and 4 additional students were added, bringing that to a total of 15 students. In second grade, 97 students were progress monitored. Of those 97, 63 were making sufficient progress. 30 underwent additional with the QPS and Hegarty. And the adjustments for intervention, 25 received intervention in the fall. 9 students were able to exit intervention. 16 continued intervention, and 5 additional students were added, bringing the total to 21 students. Next steps for that, after our March benchmark assessments, we will hold the data meetings again. The data will be collaboratively analyzed to reassign targeted intervention groups. We'll look at the interventions. We look at the children's attendance in those interventions, if the interventions seem to be working with enough time. If they're not, what are the next steps or different options to use? So the data meetings are really important. And then on top of the benchmarking, the progress monitoring, some additional things we're changing the way we look at data and determining intervention groups through the CPT framework. We're planning fun and interactive events. So Mrs. Boland, our math coach, is implemented a school-wide snowball fight challenge where classes earn snowballs by completing ST math puzzles. And she put those up right outside the office. So on their way to lunch, they could see how many snowballs each class received by completing the puzzles, and they were really into it. And the winning class will get to make snow with Gigi and Mrs. Boland. So that was a kindergarten class won that. So we'll be setting up that pretty soon. We are creating coherence by implementing high quality instructional materials with fidelity. Interventions we're using are decoding duos, or Orton Gillingham, OG, if necessary, for literacy, and bridges for math. We've been visiting the classrooms, both as school-based admin team and with Mrs. Brown, to monitor the planning and pacing of instruction. We're meeting bi-weekly with Mrs. Brown and the instructional coaches, and we're prioritizing professional development during alternative times like staff meetings and weekly common planning times. At the common planning meetings, our coaches are leading structured sessions to support teachers with wit and wisdom and illustrative math. We're looking at pacing, we're looking at deeper concept understanding and efficient lesson planning. They can help identify needing more focus, streamlining repetitive content. They're basically breaking down the units ahead of time for us. What do we really have to focus on? What did we have trouble with last year? What can we kind of skip if it's a little repetitive? Adding in resources for the teachers to use. It's been really great to see and be a part of. That's about it I have.
How does the information travel from the exiting second graders who have participated in these interventions to the two upper elementary schools?
It depends on the student. For some of them that were being followed by ACT, all of the ACT notes up with them. Beyond that, we typically will provide like a list of what the students were receiving. So we do placement cards that we fill out for each individual kid. And on the placement card, it will say whether they were receiving an intervention or not receiving an intervention, for whether they were getting counseling, all of those different things. And then those forms go on to the respective schools.
No, iReady has been in Panorama. I'm not sure if Dibbles is in Panorama yet. So you can actually go back when you get to the upper grade levels and you can see where their iReady scores have hit basically at every grade level since they've been taking it. But we do have to double check if Dibbles now is in Panorama.
And then our last goal.
Right.
As you can see, we have a beautiful new playground that is cased in snow and ice. So it is not safe for kids to play on playgrounds in the winter. They're as you can see, the snow doesn't get cleared from those areas. So we are waiting patiently for the snow to melt so we can do a little mini grand opening ceremony for our new playground. The new playground equipment, just so that you are aware, is designed specifically for our younger students. It's really designed with ages 3 to 5 in mind. Our other playground is designed for ages 6 to 12. The size of the equipment is smaller. And this playground in and of itself is smaller. So it won't be that every class gets an opportunity to play out there at recess time. What we're going to do is prioritize outside of the lunch and recess block. Our preschool gets priority over utilizing this playground. During our lunch and recess block, we are going to prioritize 2 to 3 classes for each lunch to play on this playground. And we're going to utilize the playground for classes who have students with mobility challenges will get first priority at utilizing this as a whole class. And then beyond that, prioritize the younger age students since the size of the equipment is made more. However, all of our little guys have been very excitedly watching the construction of this playground, and I'm getting little notes in my box about when can we play on it. So I want to make sure every class at least gets a chance to get out there and have their dedicated time. So I'm going to create a schedule where every class signs up and goes out and has one time. And then outside of that, I'm going to send a message to families as well, letting them know about this because it will be open to families outside of school hours to utilize.
Hey, what is it we're doing in the spring? We have one more thing to complete this playground. The groundwork after.
Yeah, there's no seeding.
Okay,
So there's no grass out there yet. So once that snow first melts, it's going to be very muddy.
just as a reminder, this was an ESSER funded project, the last of the ESSER grant. So I think we have about $30,000 sitting there for the springtime to finish that up.
They're going to do hydro seeding, and they said that it'll take just a few weeks for that to kind of set up properly before. Until then, it's going to be a bit muddy. And then the last part of this goal is really focused on character assemblies. Focusing in the past, we had just done general character traits, but this year we're really focused on character traits that celebrate diversity and treating others with kindness and respect. So our first one I told you about in the fall was with Five Fingers, a graphic street artist from Norwalk, Connecticut. He came up and spoke to the kids and read his book, Love More Than Ever, which he describes as a small guerrilla street art movement attempting to shift the paradigm from hate and bigotry to love and acceptance. He's coming back in the spring. Paint the mural for us that is going to embrace those values, and it's going to use pieces of student suggestions into the mural. Originally, I had chosen a couple of indoor spaces, and when he was up, I was showing them to him, but he's really very intrigued about painting on the outside of the building since he is a graffiti artist. He also has training in fine art too, so don't be too worried. But he was looking at the spot between our two gym doors, which I think would be pretty interesting to do something out there. It's sheltered and covered, so it wouldn't get too weathered. And it would be the first thing people see as they're coming up to our building. Every parent, every kid in the morning coming through Carline. I'm assuming that since it's on the outside of the building, I'm going to need some sort of approval for that. I'm not sure what the process is. So if anybody knows, please feel free to come. Our next is
Can outline a process.
Our next assembly is coming up at the end of March. It's been planned by our Principals Advisory Council, and it's going to tie into the central theme we've been working on as a district with Dr. Jessica Peppel. Her work is really focused on the concept of sustaining a culture of belonging. So we have actually chosen belonging as our next character trait. And we're going to read the book, The Smallest Spot of a Dot. And then we're going to do a kind of school-wide project where each student will create their own dot. Those dots will come together to make a class collage, and the class collages will come together to make a school-wide collage representing the diversity across our school. And we have one more to plan after.
Meadowbrook? Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
I think alphabetically, Maple Shade, be up next.
All right, sounds good.
All right, good evening, everybody.
Hey, Mr. Martin.
All right. Okay, ready when you are.
Okay.
All right, so in terms of scoring the whole child, good news is if you look at this number, 90%, we are above our yearly goal. And with that being said, this has been a real nasty season of illness. So there are some things beyond our control. We're trying the best that we can to create an environment in which our students want to come to the school, and we're partnering with parents, in order to get them there. So the good news is, despite these illnesses, we're not where we want to be, but we are above our goal. As I've said in previous meetings, we utilize a system to determine who the students are at most risk who the ones are that aren't coming to school the most often and who the most chronic, absentee students are. And I'm able to communicate effectively and regularly with parents in order to ensure that I am stressing the importance of sending their child to school. In terms of data, I know that it's gone through the data as a whole, but I will slow down a little bit and just allow everyone the opportunity to be able to look at the graphs as they currently stand. I'll mention the next steps in the bullets coming after this, but where we are right now, as you can see, we have 26% and 23% students in the green, and then 32% students in the yellow. And though we want less yellow and more green, I am happy to see that we don't have a sizable majority of students in the red. We constantly want to shrink that number and push it closer to the yellow so that students are they're partially meeting those expectations. Here is our reading scores for the year as they currently stand. Yeah, I'm sorry, Gordon. Okay. And here is our,
How do you?
yeah, sorry, here's our growth percentages for the year as attached to the reading scores. Again, I'll get into the next steps in a little bit, but I did want everyone to be able to see this. If you want to move on to the math.
Can we stop there for 1 second?
Yes.
So, Connor, when you look at the 32% who have made less than 19% progress towards their typical growth, has that been a topic of conversation and by identifying who those 93 students are and talking through why, what's prohibiting them from being able to make that typical growth?
Not in identifying who those particular students are, because as of right now, the focus of the school year has been to restart the curricular initiative back to square one with the Fidelis implementation of the two curricula. In this case, Wit and Wisdom start from square one. So the focus of the teachers has been to implement collaboratively and with fidelity this tier one, because this is what we're looking at when we see so much yellow. This is it's a tier one concern that we have. So how to shore up the tier one instruction across the board. So implementing it with fidelity, with consistency, and I'll get into the planning that has occurred grade level wise in order to maximize the effectiveness of the curriculum. With that being said, we do look at iReady data. We do look at the trackers. We are able to look to see where students are doing to recommend them for next steps. So looking at that particular graph, I can't tell you with certainty that we have looked at that particular graph in order to make next steps. The focus of the year has been less so on, the graph and digging into the data so much as it has been a major focus and push on the tier one instruction across the board for both curricula.
Okay.
And similarly, here is math. So it's almost half and half in terms of green and yellow distribution. But what should be noted, celebrated, is that if you were to compare the math and the readings, have less students in the red in math than we do for ELA, which shows all of the work that we have done in and around math instruction and building a culture of mathematical learning and resilience for our students. And here is the growth.
Same will be true for this.
Correct. And here's the projected proficiency.
That's as if we took MCAS the day that you administered iReady, correct? That's as no additional growth?
That is no additional growth.
Okay.
All right, so here are the next steps. Here's the in terms of, but here is just the larger conversation at Maple Shade. So, as I stated, this year it was a very big, at the end of last year, the district, in that we were going back to basics. We're going to implement the two curricula of illustrative math and Wit and Wisdom, with fidelity. So this would have been our third year of implementing these curriculum, but we're treating this really as year one. So Previously, the first year that we launched them, we messaged out, get to understand the curriculum as best you can, continue with year two. But, after looking at everything, we went back to the drawing board and said, I think that we need to internalize this curriculum across the board to ensure consistency. So that no matter what classroom a child happened to be in any one of the buildings, they were receiving comparable and consistent education from class to class to class, which builds in the rhythms and the routines and the rigor and the expectations from class to class to class to calibrate the expectations for our students so that when they move on to the next class, it's that much easier for the next teacher who accepts all the students coming from all the different classrooms to pick up where they left off, because everyone has had that similar education due to the tier one implementation. So that has been the work, that has been the focus this year in terms of implementing and in terms of collaborating with one another to ensure that there is similar pacing so that no one teacher is, that behind their counterparts, so that all students in the building and all students in the grade levels and all students across the district are close in pace, so that consistency, again, is more prevalent than we have seen before. So that has been the focus.
I don't know, there's coordination and now you said across the district. Yeah, great.
That has been important, heavy lifting. And I just want to give a shout out and an acknowledgement and appreciate teachers who have done everything asked of them and are doing an incredible job at lifting these curricula, which are, and I'll be honest, they are not easy to implement. They are incredibly dense, and we expect them to be experts at this, and they are doing their jobs incredibly well in increasing the levels of rigor and expectations for our students while being able to meet them where they are. With that said, there is always a need for further support. So we continue to utilize Deb Duville, our reading specialist, who is able to provide reading intervention to identified students using MCAS data, using iReady data, using teacher recommendations. So we're able to calibrate that together with one another and then identify the students who would benefit from that. This is our first year implementing math intervention in the building, utilizing the Bridges intervention system. So we are collaborating with Ann Zito, our math coach, who looks at the math diagnostic at the end of each round to identify the students who could receive intervention services, and then coordinates with David Axelrad, our GT and enrichment teacher, who also has taken this on to be our math interventionist. They coordinate with one another. They collaborate with the classroom teachers, and using additional screeners within the Bridges intervention system, identify the students per home grade or per homeroom who would be able to benefit from additional support in math. And then we're able to revisit at the end of each diagnostic and see if any students are able to move out and which students are able to move in. So over the last couple of years, we have had success with our after school, tutoring support. In years past, primarily it has been only math because we haven't had an official math intervention program. So the fact that we've had it this year, it allows us to be able to, utilize some time after school to build in reading support. So last year, 19 out of the 20 students engaged in last year's program achieved either partially meets or a meeting on MCAS test. So if that, holds true, then we'll have similar success next year as well. So right now we have 18 students enrolled in after school reading support utilizing iReady MyPath along with additional materials brought in by our tutors. And then I'm beginning the process of identifying students who might benefit from math. And then I think it's the first or second week of March. We'll just swap out and get the next group in and focus on March until the end of the year.
Connor, when you say they're using iReady MyPath, does that mean they're accessing online instruction, or are they receiving lessons based on their path from a educator?
They are, it's online.
Okay.
It's a combination of MyPath online
Okay.
and additional materials provided by the tutors to break up the monotony of just being on MyPath for so long. So this is the first year that we're utilizing math centers within our math curricula as attached to the illustrative math curriculum. So Previous to this, the only supplemental material that we have provided to our math programs has been ST Math. We have had a lot of success with ST Math. We met our goal last year. The kids love it. We've bought in as a school. But this year, in order to provide more flexibility and more variety with what we can provide for our students, we have engaged in math centers. So the first couple of months of school, the focus was to really train our teachers on that, get them used to that, allow our students enough exposure with math centers before we re-engaged fully with ST Math. So now on top of illustrative math, we also have students engaging in math centers and ST Math. And much like Meadowbrook, we engaged in the Snowball Challenge, and Zito oversaw that. We have our winter waddle, and we're getting ready for March Mathness. So it's great for our students to get engaged in math. Friendly competition, great about SC Math. It's very goal-based. Every student knows exactly where they are, where they need to be, and the teachers are there to always support them. And all of this work is weaving in and out of the focused CPT meetings that we are having this year that are facilitated either by our math coach, Ann Zito, or Heather Brown. And that has been great to have everyone in the same room, grade level, to be able to dive into the content expectations. And again, going back to that consistency from room to room to room, having everyone in the same room with our math coach and or our curriculum director has allowed for a very healthy conversation. Might have. And to support that, the tier 1 implementation of the Fidelidus curriculum. In January, everyone who taught ELA was provided professional development around comprehension by Heather Brown, where they through the Scarsboro's rope. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, but if you were to visualize 2 ropes together, that is what comprehension is. One rope is represented by word recognition and the other language comprehension. And each one of those 2 ropes are comprised of various strands themselves. So gone are the days of just looking at a paragraph and determining the main idea and supporting details. It's much more complex and comprehensive than that. All of our teachers were able to get intense professional development on the larger why behind our curriculum, so that if they have a larger understanding of the why behind the curriculum, and better implement the what of the curriculum. And on that same day, our teachers, any teacher that taught math, also had professional development by Ann Zito on the importance of manipulatives and how to use manipulatives in order to increase their understanding of any math idea that they face on a daily basis, which, going back to the graphs that we had looked at, so if you see a number of students in the yellow who are 1 grade level below, it doesn't mean that they can't access grade level material. It just means that they need additional support in being able to lift themselves up to that grade level. So having a professional development on the effectiveness on manipulatives, how to normalize manipulatives so that no one student feels left out or singled out for using manipulatives. And that just becomes the process of how we engage in math will help all of our students be able to shrink that yellow and move towards the green. Our teachers within CPT have analyzed MCAS scores to identify larger trends that we have seen the previous year in order to just be aware as we move closer to the MCAS test and implement the curriculum. And this next bullet is the one that I think is really important in terms of planning and implementing the curriculum. CPT is incredibly important, and I'm glad that we have it built into our schedule. Being able to stop and reflect and think is important for us as professionals. But I need to acknowledge that 45 minutes is not a lot of time, especially when you have to, you've had a full day of teaching and you drop your students off at gym, and you come and you sit down and you have to take off your teaching hat and you have to put on your curriculum designer hat or your data analysis hat. The time goes by incredibly quickly. So as soon as momentum starts to get gained, the kids are back in class. So I'm a big proponent of release days. we've had a number of those where our grade level teachers are able to collaborate with each other for hours on end, either a half day or a full day, either with, for math, our math coach, and for ELA with Heather Brown to look at the entirety of a unit, backwards plan, collapse lessons that are repetitive or redundant, slow down on other larger ideas that need to be focused on. So those lesson planning days are really, really important for the internalization of this curriculum.
And is that provided through a sub-budget, through coverage by paras?
Mostly by paras. Yeah, mostly by paras.
Basically, it comes through the sub-budget.
Through the sub-budget?
We are currently in the process of revising our ACT process. So when a student is identified as just struggling in the classroom, we always want to get better at how we're supporting that student and what supports are in place. So my student support team is currently creating a draft of how to revise the ACT process when they're done. I will take a look at it. I will have Mrs. Sullivan take a look at it as well, along with Mrs. Brown to provide some feedback on it, in addition to the fact that we are going to be revising our MTSS practice and protocol so that if there is a student who has been identified as needing additional supports, rather than immediately just recommending that student for special ed testing and evaluation, what are the things that we can do? So in order to answer that question, we need to provide more tools for our teachers in their toolbox, which is where MTSS comes in. So these two processes in tandem will allow for greater support for our students. And then this year, I'll get to some data in a little bit around engagement, but we've had a high level of engagement this year. And one of the reasons why is, we were fortunate enough to receive an $18,000 grant from eLeaf to procure 24 VR headsets to support engagement in the classroom and to support the learning that's occurring in the core classes. So in short bursts of 15, 20 minutes, our students are able to have a virtual reality experience related to what they're learning in their classes. I was just in one today in third grade. Our students have just finished up in that particular classroom exploring space in Wit and Wisdom. So they went to space in virtual reality, and there's different types of virtual reality experiences. So in some, they could walk across the surface of the moon. Others, it's a 360 picture that they can look around. Some, it's a 360 video they can watch. And others, it's when you have it on, it's not actually anything other than what you are seeing. Like I would be looking at all of you. However, there's a cube that you can hold up, and it will attach itself to the camera, and it will superimpose an image over that cube. So in this case, our students were able to hold the moon in their hands and really examine it and look into it and really see what the surface of the moon looked like. In fourth grade, our students were able to, after finishing up the circulatory system in Wit and Wisdom, they were able to literally hold the human heart in their hands and look in the ventricles. Superintendent Smith and Mr. Pearson happened to pop in on a couple days when our third graders were in the ocean, and they happened to swim with sharks. So that was fun to see. So that was just a nice boost for our kids, because curriculum, it can be dry and it is very rigorous. And this is a great way to support what they are learning and build in some smiles too.
Is that subscription based? How do we get the experiences themselves? Where do they?
It is subscription based, and I'll be asking the PTO to fund it in 2 years once the subscription runs out.
Initially came through the grant.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. And all of this goes to back to why we're really all here and what's all about the students themselves. Especially at our grade range, we want to make sure that, yes, we are pushing our students with rigor. Yes, we are preparing them critically thinking. It's something that I think a lot. They are entering a world in which truth is not certain, and truth is different depending on what website you are looking like. So the more our students are able to have critical thinking skills, the better prepared they are for the world that they are inheriting. With that being said, I need to make sure that our students feel cared for and they feel supported and them. So some things to celebrate here. We have some students whose demographics tend to be a little bit more vulnerable and tend to self-report a little bit lower, traditionally speaking. As you can see here, in these areas, we have a number of questions on our panorama. Students of these demographics are self-reporting positive Yale average. So there's always work to be done, certainly, but this has been a massive focus for Maple Shade in embracing all students and allowing every student the opportunity to have a platform and celebrate who they are. And I believe that those celebrations are paying off and them feeling comfortable. You can go back one, Gordon?
That one?
No, go back. Oh, no, go back. Go forward. Go forward. There we go. So everything in blue, the numbers have either stayed the same, comparable to the fall, have increased. So as you can see, at this time, 90% of our students feel as though they have supportive relationships, which is really what it is all about. And engagement, going back, if you compare that engagement on the lowest row. Currently, 89% of our students are self-reporting positive engagement. And what's notable is if you compare it to the percentage last year at this time. Our students are they're engaging higher, and as you will see, they are self-reporting that they are able to push through when they need to at higher rates. So here, we dropped 1 point in having a teacher from school, but still it's only a point, and an 85% is very, very solid. I'm very proud of that number. But the number I'm very proud of is that bottom one, that 91%. Do you have a friend from school who you can count on to help you no matter what? One of the, as you know, if you remember this year, we're really focusing on, being made in the shade, where we strive to be hardworking, actively engaged, determined to succeed, and empathetic in all that we do. And we've been stressing that empathetic piece a lot lately. So how to be a good friend, how to understand where someone else is coming from. And this, with the social emotional lessons through Second Step provided by our adjustment counselor and our guidance counselor, every week is reinforcing all of those conversations and the work that we're doing to make sure that our students know how to be just good people. Okay. And this 87% that I have highlighted, that's what it comes down to. I want that to increase, but to have 87% of our students say that they feel like they are part of a community at my school, that is all right. With bullying, I want bullying rates to be 0. I don't want any student to feel as though they've been the target of bullying. But the good news is,
82%
positive.
correct.
Yes,
They weren't the target of bullying.
Yes. So they have not, 80% of students have stated that they are not the target of bullying. And what's great is that even if they state that they have witnessed bullying, or if they have been the target of bullying, they acknowledge that the school itself and those within the school has made an effort to stop bullying from happening. So at least they feel as though work is being done to support them as much as possible. Our positive feelings is the area that needs the most work. It didn't drop, the numbers didn't drop that much, but they did drop consistently, which is something that you tend to find, in the winter. I mean, if you were to ask me about my positive feelings compared to the beginning of the year, my numbers would drop too. But at the very least, we had major growth during this past week. How often? And yeah, I want my 3 to 5 grade level kids feeling loved for sure. So that's a sign of celebration. And engagement. How excited are you about going to school every day? That stayed the same. How interested are you in what you have been learning? That increased. When you feel like giving up, how likely is it that you will keep on trying? 94% of our students say that they will keep on trying, and that is, no, learning isn't easy. No two people learn the same way. And it's important that you just don't give up and you find a different way. How much do you pay attention? Our students are self-reporting that they're paying attention at high levels. And they're comfortable with asking their teachers questions, which was not the case when I was a child. And that's something that I stress to my kids, that I was the kid that I was afraid to ask questions. And shame on me, that's my fault. It's my learning, it's my education, and I should be actively engaged, and I shouldn't be ashamed to ask a question. So the fact that 89% of our kids are comfortable asking questions goes to show that that relationship piece that they're building with their teachers is benefiting them in their own learning. And again, this last question is very similar to when you feel like giving up, how likely is it that you'll keep on trying? We'll try it in a different way. So they're showing and they're self-reporting that they're being flexible and there's not one about accessing their learning. They're trying multiple ways, even when they get stuck. So all of this is supported by a number of initiatives that we have in place. We just had our International Food Festival this year. Every year it just seems to grow. We had more countries represented. We had more people packed into the cafeteria. It is a way to celebrate backgrounds and where we are. I have described this, that the International Food Festival is just reflective of the fact that all of us at Maple Shade are jigsaw pieces that, when put together, make up the jigsaw puzzle, this picture, and we all come from different places, and we all bring with us different cultures, and being able to showcase that, it's very, very successful. We have a number of spirit days and clubs to, again, just generate interest as we go along outside of the classroom. We implemented a 50th day this year. The week after Halloween. Everyone dressed like they were from the 50s, so it was just like Grease all day. It was a lot of fun. We have our holiday spirit week. We had our 100th day where everyone dresses up like they're 100 years old. We had our Valentine's Day. So we have a number of days to just, celebrate and have fun while learning. And in terms of recognizing students and allowing them to feel as though they are part of our school, at the end of the month, I will, announce that Ramadan is going to be coming, and we allow a space for our students who practice Ramadan, so that they don't have to sit in the cafeteria and be surrounded by food as they fast. And so, they hear from me that you might see some of your classmates, not in the cafeteria, and this is why. Last year when I did that, to have students start beaming that their celebration was recognized, and parents were very appreciative that their culture was recognized throughout the building. That was important. We also have Black History Month throughout the course of February. In morning announcements, we partner with our TV studio club, and they put together packages of figures within Black history, both past and current, to celebrate. Similarly, we did the same thing with Hispanic Heritage Month. And we have our second year of our BIPOC club, which was so popular that the number of students interested doubled from last year to this year. And again, I am eternally grateful to Natalie and Birchlin for allowing us to come over every week so our students can be mentored. It's just a great experience. To see the elation from our kids, it really is, it matters. As does our Rainbow Club, to have a safe space in our building, so that our students feel safe and supported and seen. That is an important club to have at this moment in time. We constantly recognize perseverance and grit and productive struggle through our academic adventure awards, recognizing that learning is not always easy and that the most significant learning comes when it is scary and challenging, and to push through and persevere, they are academic adventurers. So monthly, we have students celebrated for their academic achievements and their academic adventure awards. An offshoot of that, dedicated to ST Math, comes our Persevering Penguin Awards, where students are shouted out and they receive award on our TV studio, where they have been shouted out by their teachers for just really pushing through with ST Math, because ST Math can be challenging. It is it's not language based. There are no directions. You have to problem solve yourself. You have to problem solve your way through whatever is being asked of you. It can be very challenging, and for our students to be able to push through that, those that were struggling and are able to get through and don't give up are eligible for a Persevering Penguin Award. And then any student that is caught living by being made in the shade gets shouted out, and they help co-host the announcements with me. So for all of those reasons, and just the day-to-day relationships that are cultivated by our teachers who go out of their way to make sure that every single kid in this building feels safe and warm, this leads to all of the positive SEL celebrations that we saw on the prior slides.
Thank you. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Connor. Appreciate it. Emmanuel, same as last week, we're gonna run long. If you have homework or anything you want to do,
Okay.
at any point, just give me a wave and you can.
Next up, Mrs. Santinella and Mountain View.
Hi, everybody.
Elaine.
So I will also start out with attendance. Our mid-year attendance data is almost exactly the same as last year, 95.5 year to date. That 84.7 from February 14th. We were really struggling over the last month or so with illness. A frequent call over the walkie-talkie for a couple weeks was, Mr. Potter, we need you in various classrooms to clean up. We also had a really bad flu situation. Several students were out multiple days with fevers that couldn't be brought down. So we've had a lot of sickness at Mountain View with staff and students over the last month. So 7% of our students are considered chronically absent. That's 20 students that have missed more than 10 days of school to this point. Reasons vary. We do have students with chronic medical conditions. Unfortunately, I've had a couple of students who have had some unexpected family deaths, and they were out for some periods of time. But like Gordon said, whether it's a valid reason or not, it's included in our percentages. So that's where we are now. On the next 5 slides, I'm going to show you our academic progress to date in ELA and math. This is just the outline of our goals, which are the same as the districts. On the next slide, you have our reading data. At this point, 54% of our students are considered proficient. They are in the green section of the graph, and we are up from 33% in the fall. And the current projected proficiency, which is on the next slide, I put the typical growth and the stretch growth numbers up there. At this point, our proficiency for typical growth is 37% and stretch growth is 44%. This is in reading, as I said. Last year, it was, we had 40% of our student exceed or meet expectations on MCAS, and it did closely mirror the projected proficiency from iReady last year. So I'm hoping that we beat it a little bit. That's the goal. But as of right now, this is where we stand. In math, on iReady, we had 52% of our students are proficient right now, up from 31% in the fall. And for projected proficiency in math, with typical growth, we would be 46%, and with stretch growth, 57%. Last year, 51% of our students exceeded or met expectations in math. In the afternoon session of professional development on January 29th, a data dive into the MCAS item analysis to identify the standards that our students did poorly on last year. None of the questions were released last year, so we don't have the opportunity to see exactly what was asked, but we can use the analysis to focus on these standards in class and during our MCAS after-school program. Our MCAS after-school program is running currently for reading. Math starts on Wednesday. We are doing it by invitation for grades 4 and 5. So invitations for the program were mailed to parents of students who scored close to the threshold between partially meeting expectations and meeting on last year's MCAS. I followed up with emails to parents that I hadn't heard from after I mailed home. And before we did send home the invitations, the MTSS team spoke to everyone on their grade level teams to make sure that we thought we had made good choices with the students selected, and they did agree. So we are having our 8 ELA sessions started February 3rd and run through March 31st on Mondays after school. And then 8 math sessions will start this Wednesday and run through April 16th. I have 2 teachers at each grade level, one for ELA and one for math. In grade 4, 20 students were invited. We wanted to keep the numbers small, so it was meaningful. We had 4 students who were invited for both ELA and math, 10 for just ELA, and 6 for just math. A total of 11 students responded that they will be coming, so about half of what we invited. In grade 5, 33 students were invited, 4 for ELA and math, 13 for ELA, and 16 for math. And we have a total of students signed up for the sessions, and again, 1 teacher for each subject.
Those are after school, Andy.
They're after school from 2:30 to 3:30.
Mondays and
Mondays for ELA and Wednesdays for math. I wanted to separate it so some students can. I actually did have a parent reach out. They were invited for, I believe it was for math, and she wanted to know if he could also come for ELA. So of course I said yes, but I would have liked a higher response rate, but I know after school sports and other activities sometimes conflict. That's all of my academic data. The next part of the
Resource are they using?
They are teaching by the standards. They're using what they can from the curriculum, but they're also going back and using release questions that we have from the past. They're both, all the teachers involved have been teaching the subject areas for a long time and have administered MCAS for a long time. So they're using what they feel will definitely help the kids move along. I could get you specifics if you wanted them, but.
Thank you.
So the next slides are about our panorama survey results for mid-year and the SABRS mid-year. I know part of our goal is also to survey staff and parents. We only do that at the end of the year. So on the panorama survey, our results improved from the fall in 4 of the 6 categories. 1 category remained the same and 1 slightly declined. The 2 categories that stand out as having lower favorable responses than the other 4 are the challenging feelings and the positive feelings. And I want to explain those a little because the SABRS data completely kind of contradicts those 2 categories. So the challenging feeling section asks how often students felt mad, lonely, sad, or worried in the past week. And 76% of the students responded favorably. So it's the other.
They weren't feeling
Exactly.
bad, sad, or angry. Okay.
I have a problem with the response scale. I'll be honest. The scale says almost never, once in a while, sometimes, frequently, and almost always. I feel like some of those are a little bit redundant, and especially when you're dealing with 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, for them to tell the difference between those, I think is a little much. So the other part of it is that sometimes falls in the middle, and it's considered by Panorama to be an unfavorable response. So kids who answered that sometimes they feel mad, lonely, sad, or worried, it was only 6 to 9% responded frequently or almost always. So had we counted sometimes in a positive way, the percentages would have been higher. Same thing with the positive sections. I have 2 problems with this section. They are asked how often they feel excited, happy, loved, or safe. And I joked in the leadership team meeting that excited, in my opinion, is a very strong word. I don't know how many of us say we're excited to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go to school. I find it to be a strong word, but with the statements, again, reading those 5 selections and sometimes being seen as unfavorable, 48% of the kids said they were excited. But if you put in sometimes, it went up to 88%. So that's a big difference and a big swing just by one word in the choices. If sometimes had been favorable, 92% would have been happy, 89% would have been loved, and 97% would have felt safe. So I think it makes a big difference if we could tweak that for the responses. And then lastly, on the SABRS, which stands for Social, Academic, and Emotional Behavior Risk Screener. As you can see, these are all 3 grade levels, 3, 4, and 5. The purple are the students who are low risk based on the questions they ask. The light pink is some risk and the dark pink is high. We have no students in the high risk area, which is a positive. SABRS only uses a 4-point scale. Never, sometimes, often, and almost always. And it assigns points between 0 and 3 for the responses. So to the statement, I am happy, if students answered almost always, they get 3 points. If they say almost never, they get 0. So when you look at the percentages here of the students who are in the positive range, you see why the scale, I think, helps, but also the point assignment to the responses is a little bit more accurate than just assigning the 5 different categories. So I'm happy with the result. And say that second step, as Connor mentioned, we do teach second step to grades 3, 4, and 5. Nick Hutchins is 3rd grade, I teach 4th grade, and Miss Campbell teaches 5th grade. Mrs. Pelzick used to teach 4th grade, but because of the switch in her schedule this year, we didn't have anyone to teach 4th, so tag on it. I have to say I like being back in the classroom teaching. It's been a very long time. But we feel that the second step curriculum is a little bit infantile for grades 3, 4, and 5. Norma and Nick and Amy have mentioned that to me in the past, but now that I'm actually teaching it, I see how they feel. And we are looking into some more research-based programs to use. There's really no focus at all on bullying. There's no focus at all on social media, which is huge, unfortunately, at this grade level. So we're going to look into something else. I can tell you that Monday, the DA's office is coming to do three separate assemblies, one for each grade level on social media and gaming and all of that. And we're going to have a parent, I'm sending out invitations tomorrow. They're going to do a presentation for parents that night.
Are those in the morning by chance?
They're going to be in the morning.
Pam and I are coming Monday morning.
Well, yeah, third grade, I know, because I was going to say.
And we'll come after them.
You can come, well, Hillary Coughlin, I know, invited all of you to come for Read Across America. She invited me also and some other people in the school, but she asked for me to have the third grade assembly be last because some of you are coming first thing in the morning to do the reading, so.
Great.
We'll do third grade last, but the fifth and fourth will also be going on probably when you're done reading, so anyone's more than welcome to come.
Cool. Thank you.
And I think that's all I have.
But did you have the data around typical or stretch growth in the packet? I know that was what the goals were based on. I just wasn't sure.
I had it on the slide, the typical and stretch growth for talking about.
No, sorry, I meant the one
Okay,
percent of students who are actually going to meet it. That's okay.
I don't have that. I'm sorry. I thought this is
That's
what
okay.
we're looking for.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bertram Park with Mr. Pearson and Mrs.
Good evening, everybody. All right, we're ready to roll. Can we jump right in and keep the trend going of child by looking at our attendance? And you're going to hear a lot of common themes. We are at 95% average daily attendance. Chronic absence is at 11% for a lot of the same reasons that you've already heard. You know, we have a lot of illnesses, family vacations, hospitalization type stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that number, but if you next slide for us, Gordon. We're all over this. It's a big push for us to try and reduce the absenteeism because we realize that being in school is the cornerstone to success for the year. So we're trying to leave no stone unturned when it comes to that. Again, our student intervention coordinator is on the phone for a good chunk of every single day, reaching out to individual students' families that are chronically absent or tardy. We've made a lot of use this year of the district and come over and work with us on some of our biggest cases. And she's finding, you know, a lot of the same challenges we are with unresponsive families, you know, calls that don't get returned, meetings that people don't come to. It's a challenge. We've done quite a bit to try to partnerships with local businesses to try and have our incentives both long-term and short-term. So we always have drawings. We like to celebrate them when they are. Of course, we're doing our due diligence with the letters sent home to families and students that are 10% more days. We've actually gone to houses this year, knock on doors, wake some kids up, get them to school on time. So really trying to turn over every stone that we can to make sure that we have our kids there. We've got our counselors have a training coming. Tools for engaging some of our families who have a hard time getting their kids to school. On everything, including even having to file a couple CRAs this year to try and get some court support for a couple of cases. And we're hoping to see that number improve down a percentage point from where we were last year. So small steps, but we want to see much bigger steps going forward. Right. If you have not had your fill of iReady data yet, we have some iReady data for you around teaching and learning. So these are our recent winter diagnostic numbers. We did take our diagnostic the week of December 9th. So we're still away from the halfway point of the year. The numbers are showing positive trends. You want to see we have more green and a reduction in the yellow and the red. So you can see, you know, the numbers there for yourselves, how we are trending in the right direction for ELA. And if you go to the next one for math, you will see the same green is growing while our yellow and our red are decreasing, which is the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. Speaks to multi-tiered system of supports. But where are we with the learning goals? Again, for the year, we wanted 65% of our students. ELA, 55% in math, wanted 35% of the students to reach their stretch growth and reading and 25% in math. So again, we weren't even quite halfway through the year, but I think this is the numbers Julia was looking for a moment ago. You can see where we are at on these. Our median score for reading is 89%. So if you took our entire student body, we're right in the very middle, and progress, you know, kind of blows away our goal there. 65%. So we like that. But if you look at it from a grade level perspective, grade 6, we already have 47% of our kids by December 9th had made their typical growth goal for the year, 50% in grade 7 and 49% in grade 8. So we were well on track to trying to meet the goal that we had set for ourselves. And for the stretch growth, which the numbers were in the 30s, we got 20% of our kids already met it in 6th grade, 19% in 7th grade, and 16% in grade 8. To meet our goals there as well.
So same question, Steve, when you look at the 38% for typical and the 44% for stretch, of kids who have made less than 19% progress towards those two targets, are those kids, have they been identified? Do we know? Because that's
They have been identified.
100 kids in each.
Every single quarter to look at, because we shift our interventions quarterly based on the data. So we meet with our coaches, our guidance counselors, teacher input, and we look at those kids using iReady scores, classroom scores, teacher anecdotal information about how the students are performing in class so that we can adjust those tiered interventions that we have to try and get the kids who need the most help, the help that they need. So our rosters are constantly shifting from our tier 3 interventions in which kids to our interventions in enrichment as well. So yes, we have identified those kids. It's a shifting cast, as you'll see in a minute here. On the next slide, see how we're moving the kids on scale. Saying reading the kids that are 3 or more grade levels below, again, that median score is 117% for progress towards their typical growth. 59% have already met their target for the year. So yes, we know who those kids are, and I think it's a constantly evolving process to try to keep those kids identified to make sure they're getting the interventions that they need. All right, and then. All right, so here's again our numbers for math. Again, the goals for math were a little less than ELA. We're looking for 55% typical growth for the year. Grade 8 grade 6, we were at 36% growth. Grade 7, 28% of the kids had met their growth target, 47% in grade 8. So again, we're on track to make that. And for our stretch growth, more modest numbers there, but we're going to keep pushing on that. 5% of our 6th graders have made their goal, 6% of 7th graders have already made it, and 13% of graders have made their, which is 25% is what we were hoping to get. So we're making some progress there, but we do have more work to do. And we can again see how we're affecting the kids at the different levels of iReady, making pretty good growth with our kids that are pretty needy. Identifying those kids and trying to get them what they need. I think that our tiered thing is something we're always looking at, trying to figure out a way to tweak it to fit the needs of the kids that are in front of us. I think that we do move those kids, but it's going to be a constant battle because every quarter that cast of kids changes. We need to see what they need.
For your current 7th grade, which was last year's 6th grade, they stood out as a cohort in terms of their performance on MCAS. It was roughly a third that were meeting or exceeding expectations as opposed to some of your other cohorts, which were sitting more in the 40s and 50s. There's a sharp difference here between their performance right now as 7th graders in terms of reading versus math. Are there different interventions that are offered that are yielding stronger results in reading as of right now than they are in math?
Well, of course, they're different interventions. We're using here in our tier 2 interventions. I think a lot of what we're trying to do, be on a later slide here, is we're trying to get a lot more of data-driven instruction math. So we put a lot of capital this year into our iReady mastery assessments and then following that up with the data to see what is going to reveal. And what we're realizing is that when we do an iReady mastery check, is it doesn't necessarily match up with the pacing from the IM math instruction. They're assuming that you have prerequisite skills that they haven't learned yet. So we're going back to address that. And they're starting for the second half of the year with a new round of activators where they're trying to address those deficits that they have that are dragging down some of those scores. And we're trying to make our entire math process a lot more data-driven. When we talk about also the moving level of math they're going to be in the following year, they're going to be out the student algebra student. Having all of that mapped out so there's a lot less of a subjectivity, whether the teacher thinks that you're ready or not. We've got multiple data points from iReady, multiple mastery checks, classroom performance, even attendance. Cut scores, what we've indicated are going to bring you to success in that math. So we're trying to look at it from a kind of an overview process with multiple data points to try and get kids placed appropriately and to maybe change up our pacing a little bit to get the kids the prerequisite skills that they're going to need. Thank you. All right, so, here's the performance level and growth in the quadrant, which is showing high growth. They're there for all 3 grades for ELA. Math, 2 out of the 3 are 7th grade, and this has been kind of a strange phenomenon the last few years. They always come in there, they are in the low growth but high performance, and I think it's because of their approach, because this always flips by the end of the year. They focus on foundational skills, I know in a lot of proportions in the first half of the year, so they think that's an integral skill to have going content in the second half of the year, and by the end of the year, they're usually our highest performance on MCAS when it comes to it, so I think the approach has merit. But that's where we stand right now. We're in a pretty good spot as far as our performance and growth for iReady. We go now, we're looking at the projected proficiency. If we meet our typical growth goals for the year, we will be at 54% meets and exceeds on MCAS in ELA. We were at, I believe, 46% last year, so that would be a nice jump. If we hit our stretch growth, 64% meets or exceeds, which would be a really nice jump. So of course, the stretch growth would be our goal, and hopefully we will get somewhere near that number. Have similar math. If we hit our typical growth goal, 48% for the year. We were at 40% last year, so it would be a nice 8% jump. And if we hit our stretch growth, we had set for ourselves 55% of proficiency, meets plus exceeds on MCAS. Yeah, very nice jump as well. So we're pretty excited about our numbers. We know we have a lot of work still to do if we're going to hit those goals. Some of the things that we've been doing this year to try and get those numbers going in the right direction. We are revisiting the instructional block. That's a big push. We've had that expectation has changed, that we have lessons set up with activator, mini lessons, engagement, summarizer, graphic activity. Trying to fold all of our new initiatives into it, whether it be co-teaching, whether it be the regulated classroom, whether it be our push for engagement. How can we revisit these things to make sure that we have the basics and still pushing the work forward? We are in year 3 of IM, and I think we're getting better and better at that with each year as our teachers get more comfortable with the process. And I think we saw some of that on MCAS last year. We saw a little bit of jump forward. We are focusing a lot, Ms. Trulio, on our 6th grade and how looking at the data, we can push that instruction forward too. We want to see classroom grades match closer with what we're seeing on state testing. So we are looking at the data there. Our ELA is undergoing a curriculum review this year, so they'll be adopting high quality instructional materials for next year that are DESE approved. I think we're down to 2 that we're piloting right now, Reading Reconsidered and Fish Tank. So April, we should be taking steps to decide which one we're going to want to go with next year. We are forming a committee that's going to be part of our March faculty meeting to examine our enrichment block and see how we can improve this. So enrichment is kind of a multi-faceted tool for us. We use it for when our special education students are addressing the goals on their grid. We have a 30-minute block each day. So for students that are performing on or above grade level, they're getting enrichment, a little something extra in some of their content area, some extra labs, some exploratory stuff, some highly engaging material that they don't normally get to in the classroom. But it also provides us a tier 2 intervention for kids that are struggling in math and reading, but aren't quite low enough to qualify for some of our tiered programs. We only have so many seats. So we want to look at our enrichment block because it is kind of all over the place depending on who the kid is. Look at what we do well, where we need a little bit more cohesion, we need a little more rigor so that we can start to push some of those kids forward who are on that tier 2 to tier 1 cusp and try and get the most we can get for our buck for enrichment. We are taking steps with co-teaching this year. We've really pushed it quite a bit. I haven't put a mandate on it, but I've asked all my teachers to get comfortable with the language so that we're speaking from kind of a common place, to look at what they do well, kind of identify the model of co-teaching that they're doing and see where they dabble their toes a little bit to try something a little bit different. Push co-teaching, particularly in our 8th grade with our learning center, trying to get those kids a little more access to some grade level material, working with grade level peers in science and social studies. So we got a lot of co-teaching going on there. We've always had a co-teaching model that's kind of based on our inclusion teacher in each class. So we just want to build our skill set around that now that our special educators have a little more freedom in their day with the ETL being brought aboard, they have some opportunities to engage in some co-teaching and kind of get our kids engaged in a different way. All right, we're always looking to, of course, evolve our intervention programs. We're just saying we look at those quarterly, kind of see what we need to tweak. I know this year for eighth grade, we've in our tier 2 intervention for our eighth graders, we're looking at focusing on informational texts because it's something that they struggle with on their iReady data, giving them real world tasks that are informational. I know they were reading a driver's manual, trying to make sense of that. So you should feel a little safer on the roads because they're doing a great job with it. They're ready to get their license. They'll be doing well. Our coaches still do individual coaching cycles for teachers. We've moved it non-math and ELA to working with social studies and science teachers this year on some writing and some reading stuff. As I was alluding to earlier, the MCAS item analysis and reteaches that we're doing in math. So we're looking at areas that we're struggling. What do we need to revisit? Sometimes it's a pacing issue. Sometimes it's just something that MCAS shows that we just scored lower than we normally do. So how are we going to revisit that? And it's being a big push in our department meetings this year.
All right. So our last focus on is
Right.
is inclusive and supportive culture and climate. And in this section, we really want to make sure that we tap into our students, hear their voices, get their ideas, support students, where they are, push them further as they need to be pushed, provide some leadership opportunities and other growth opportunities, and even really help teachers foster more collaborative and respectful and trusting relationships with their students. So on our most recent Panorama survey, we have our survey data based on the responses. And so we're pretty happy with this data right here. Most of these numbers in these categories are pretty positive. So 92% of our students feel like they have supportive relationships. And we've been really pushing that all year long, through our advisory program, through checking in with students as needed, our guidance department. Students really feel that they have someone that they can tap into when needed. In terms of engagement, we're really excited to see this increase here. We've spent a lot of time working with teachers on ways to engage their students differently. We had to help them clarify to the students, what does that actually mean in terms of the questions on the Panorama survey? Felt like there might have been a little confusion around that. And once that clarification was made, students were able to respond more accurately, we feel. Again, like I said, and one of our biggest areas is really figuring out how can we engage our students more in the learning, the everyday process of school. In terms of our school climate, we didn't see much change here, but again, very positive. Same with school safety. In terms of challenging feelings and positive feelings, we have some work to do here, but we're still in the 99th percentile nationally in this area, these categories. And again, these are favorable responses to questions like, how often do you feel happy? How often do you feel safe? Hopeful, excited, things like that. So obviously, we need to work on that. If you can switch to the next slide. But some of the things that are driving this data, Steve already kind of alluded to a lot of that in terms of like co-teaching. We're really spending a lot of time with that and engaging our teachers differently so that their students can see them in different ways and really tap into them, especially with that learning center coming in, the eighth grade science and social studies, but just on all levels, not just the eighth grade. Students seeing their teachers in a different way, more positively, all the adults here supporting them. Has been huge, and the teachers are really buying into that. And then, of course, the advisory lessons, we've really been trying to establish what does it mean to be a part of the Birchland community? What does community mean? What does it look like? What does it mean to show respect to yourself, to your peers, to your friends? How do we engage with each other appropriately on social media? Things like that, like really in-depth conversations in that longer advisory period that we have every Thursday has been going a long way. And kids are really sharing, they're feeling more comfortable to share their thoughts and they're feeling more heard. And so we're seeing some positive response there. As you know, we've engaged with the Academic Leadership Association for the last 2 years. Last year, we had a full year of PD around building strong, positive, trusting relationships between teachers and students. Primarily creating a sense of belonging. Those are the topics, restoring relationships, creating a third space. And the third space is basically like where students can safely be themselves at the same time being as being social. And then also really authentically listening, teachers really listening to what kids are saying and really responding to that appropriately. And so this year, while we're not giving explicit PD on it, we're now really implementing and following up. And we're seeing a lot of that. Like when we're doing our walkthroughs, we're looking and, what do we see in the room? What are we hearing in terms of the conversations between teachers and students? And it's very positive. And then continuing to support teachers as needed in those areas. So, Lindsay Tulloch, who is the CEO of the Academic Leadership Association, his wife, they're still very much involved. They're in the building twice a week. But we also meet with them monthly. We're really looking at student data, how are students responding to these interventions, to the support. They go to team meetings, the teachers, all those things. So we're really just trying to strengthen what we've already done, pulling back a little bit, but then following up, making sure that everyone still has the support. And then as Steve also referenced, really getting into the nitty gritty, the basics, the core, revisiting the instructional block. So we have more cohesiveness, consistency across the school. So we don't just see really strong practices in one room and not necessarily the other. We want to see consistency. So what does it look like when a student first walks into the room? How are they accessing the lesson for the day? Where, how are you as a teacher explaining the focus? How are you rolling out your lesson in a way that students can really respond to in a positive and favorable way and really tap in? How are you following up as needed? How are you, checking their learning rates through exit tickets or things like that? So just core best practices. And then also a lot of teachers have really great innovations around these areas that we're sharing with one another. So that's been pretty positive. The coaches are running that and the teachers are really appreciating that.
A great round of learning walks right before the break that
Absolutely.
everybody's really excited about. They saw some really cool stuff.
Yes, that was really exciting. A couple other things that are not on this slide, but I think it's important for you to know. We also, like I said, really want to hear from the students and get their voices. So earlier this year, we held some focus groups from various different populations in the building. So we had BIPOC, we had ELL, SPED, a core general ed group, LGBTQ. We wanted to just hear, what do you feel? How are you enjoying your year so far? How are you responding to some of the things that we've done? What do you like? What do you not like? What can we do better in these particular categories? And so we got some wonderful feedback and we're taking that back and the leadership team and trying to incorporate it in some of the things and initiatives that we're doing going forward. We're also creating leadership opportunities. Like you said, you want to meet kids where they are, but then also provide additional opportunities to really challenge kids and motivate them and really make their school day like, wow, I'm doing something that I wouldn't normally get a chance to do. So we're creating a lot of leadership opportunities. Like Connor said, we have a Maple Shea mentoring group. So we have a new set of 8th grade mentors who are super excited to plan topics of discussion, to plan activities with these kids. Last year was like every other week. Now it's every week. Last year we had 10 kids. We have 20 kids now. We had to break it up into 2 sessions. So it's a really exciting time for them. We have our NJHS. Those kids are really, really excited about some of the leadership work that they're doing. They're tutoring kids at Maple Shade. We're doing different clothing drives, et cetera. And there are more opportunities coming for them throughout the year. We have a graduate program for our iReady graduates. So they've successfully completed the program in iReady. They've done everything that we've asked them to do. So now it's like, let's give them some really challenging opportunities that are fun for them in literacy, in math, technology, things that they wouldn't otherwise get. And kids are really, responding favorably to that. And this year for Q4, we have so many more kids coming up that are anticipated coming up to the point where now we're having to add an additional class for them. So we
Good
can
problem to
bring
have.
the new kid. It's a good problem. Bring the new kid, the kids that have already kind of gone through this iReady graduate program, we'll now move them up maybe to something where they can do something like passion projects. What are you passionate about? Let's, take some initiative and some more independent work, do some research, put something together, do some presentations, some, things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And then whereas the new group of kids who have recently graduated from iReady, they can now take on the program that the first group did. So I'm really excited about that. Of course, we have some wonderful after school offerings. We brought back our drama club this year after a hiatus for a couple of years. Students are so excited about that. We have robust robotics program, we have diversity club, art club, pride club. So kids are really, really excited to get involved in these after school clubs. And I think that's really helping to engage them. And like I said, we're always looking for ways to engage, to build community, and then of course, celebrate the kids when they do good work, when they make these achievements. So we have quarterly celebrations on TV. We just did one like last week. And students are really happy to be recognized, and their parents get a chance to see that. It's on the website. So we're really proud of that. That's all. Any questions?
Great stuff. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Anything else for school presentation? So you have Mr. Page and
All right, just me tonight. So, as other schools did, I am just going to start by, time to talk about our attendance data. So the first slide is just a reminder of where we were at coming into the year. The improvements we saw are chronic absenteeism, both as a whole across the school, but also in some of our different subgroups. But there's also obviously room to grow. One of the things we did last year was establish an attendance team to try to look at how to support and also address some of our issues around chronic absenteeism. We did to streamline that process this year, where both Gary and Ann took on overseeing a lot of the one, notification around attendance, and then two, identifying and assigning support when needed based on either, we'll just say, temporary chronic absenteeism or some of those prolonged situations where kids need that additional support. If you could just jump to the next slide, Mr. Smith. So snapshot is just pulled through Power School, and it gives you an idea of where our attendance rates are currently. I put this information together back in early February, and on that date, we had a 96.4% rolling average attendance throughout the school year. So we're sitting at a really solid number. The chronic absenteeism, if you scroll down in Power School, you can see those numbers about where we stand basically from 90% and below. In Power School, our current chronic absenteeism rate is sitting at 7.4%, which is different than what's in Panorama. Panorama is reporting at 11%. I think that is because of how we input our daily and then our meeting attendance. Attendance are the periods of the so I think some discrepancies between how Power School is reading that information, how Panorama is reading that information. Long and short, in Power School, our chronic absenteeism rate is at 7.4, and in Panorama, it's at 11%. Right now, just as a number, we have around 50 kids who are meeting that definition of chronically absent, which means they are at below 90% daily attendance rates. And Gary and Ann have been working with communicating to those families about their standing, sending out those warning letters, because obviously at the high school, it's a little different than the other schools where this is also connected to credits earned for those classes. So they are communicating to those families, working with those families to try to re-engage and then to improve attendance. I think so far they've sent out about 500 letters, not to 500 students, but I think we've sent out about 124 communications to students, just letting them know of what their standing is. Some kids, obviously, when they are getting those notifications for being absent for classes, they're getting it for multiple classes, so they might be receiving multiple letters, which is why you hear that number 500. We don't have 500 kids who are chronically absent, right? So just so you kind of understand how that piece works. But we do send communications for warnings and then also potential loss of credits when kids get up to high numbers of absences.
That's something, going back to the conversation we had at our last meeting, that as you plan forward for the incoming ninth grade, would you consider putting attendance as one of the pieces for competency determination?
Don't want to say yes or no.
Putting it out there more as like we were
Yeah.
talking about what that might look like, and attendance might be something to consider, especially given that period attendance leads to credits earned.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have a conversation around it. It's an interesting idea. I'm not opposed to it. I don't want to, yeah.
I just said it too now. I'm not expecting an answer. I meant more just like something as we continue to think forward. Because the competency determination was for this current
Yeah.
12th grade and 11th, but as we think forward to the incoming ninth graders, if they know, might be something to.
Yeah, we are very clear with our students when they're coming in and continuously through their high school experience about the importance of attendance and also the potential loss of credit connected to that attendance. And we'll say we are definitely trying to I'll just say, I don't want to say rigid, but stricter with that policy in the last couple of years, just to make sure that students know that you have to be in school in order to, one, learn, but then two, get those credits. So it's kind of actually, could argue, is already embedded as a graduation requirement. But maybe you could give it some more teeth under that competency determination and make something explicit connected to those classes that we talked about last time. I'm processing in real time. I don't.
That's, no.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I'm not opposed to the conversation, But okay, so the next couple slides just go through teaching and learning. And our focus has obviously been on the freshmen and sophomores when it comes to math and English. Obviously, that interesting wrinkle this year is some of our baseline coming into each year is kind of where we stood with our MCAS scores, and data this year is going to be different. But our focus was obviously making sure those kids had those skills to meet the nation. They've been the MCAS in the past, saying again on those math and English scores. What you see at the top is a breakdown of strands, how the kids did on their fall diagnostic and ELA. Below that is their winter diagnostic. The highlight here, which I think is great, is 5 out of the 6 strands. Our students performed at or above that 9th grade level in the different strands that are assessed for ELA. Obviously, the area where we still have some work to do is grammar mechanics. And that's one that we have seen consistently over the years. It's an area where kids can improve. If we could jump to math. This is one, and I know there's some questions around this one in the past, because we do see a number of strands where our students are performing based on the IXL diagnostic below grade level. The one I want to highlight where we did see some pretty significant growth this year is on algebra and algebraic thinking strand, where when kids came in, they were assessed at around a 7.5, or basically halfway through 7th grade level. On the winter diagnostic, we were able to get them pretty much almost to that grade 9 level. So we saw some great significant growth in our freshmen around that strand, which most freshmen do take algebra. So I think right now we have about 90% of our kids taking algebra, and then there's that 10% who have moved on to geometry. So that's great to see. There's obviously still some gaps that we see down at the bottom where we have concerns around below that 9th grade level for some of those different strands that the questions on the IXL for the diagnostic are geared more towards, we'll just say that those middle schools standings is where they're falling, and we definitely want to see improvements there, and that's an area we have to focus in on. This is kind of a broader snapshot that it takes the bars out and it gives you an idea of how our students are performing. So again, if you put all of those strands together, students are scoring at a 758. That's basically a 7.6, which is like a 7th, halfway through 7th grade level on algebra. Then on the 9th grade side, they are scoring at about a 9.4. So it's great to see that in ELA that the kids have gotten up to grade level. We definitely have some work to do on the math side, specifically with the freshmen. But you can also see the system does break it down by what their average monthly growth is. They're growing about 19 points per month, which is probably close to equivalent to what you might see as typical growth in IXL. We have to get that higher to close some of those gaps. And try to meet, we don't have that stretch growth information in IXL, but we would have to have that higher in order to get those kids back up to grade level. Just to highlight a couple things, if you look at where we saw some gains for our students, in grade 9 overall, freshmen on average improved grade level standing by 0.8, which is almost a full grade level on their ELA diagnostic. And then for the freshmen, they did improve almost a full grade level holistically from what we saw in the fall diagnostic to the winter diagnostic, even though there's still that gap on the math side. And then the grade 10 team. So last year was our first year where we ran that team model. And at the end of their freshman year, we had to identify the students who might need that additional layer of support. Sophomore year based on their class grades, their IXL scores. That cohort of about 25 kids, it started at 25. There's a couple we moved out, so we're at 23. From their fall diagnostic to their winter diagnostic, we saw the students improve their scores in ELA by 0.29, which is pretty decent, because these are some students who do struggle. Then on the math side, they almost gained a full grade level from their fall to their winter diagnostic. And again, these are our sophomores who we identified as, we'll just say, most at need or needing of support. So seeing that big jump in their math scores was great.
You see correlation between quarterly performance and grades that are being assigned and that 7th grade performance on the diagnostic? Like, are we seeing educators providing grades that are indicative of a grade level that is performing almost 2 grade levels below?
I can ask that question. That's definitely one we can look at with our, so we're probably talking mostly about our standard algebra courses. That's something we can look at there.
And then earlier you mentioned the shift in data when it comes to MCAS. Students are still required to take MCAS.
They were 100%, yes.
Graduation requirement. So I just want to be
Yes, no, I agree.
clear that that's our messaging to, because we will still be held accountable to the state as a community.
Yes.
As a school district. And so will our participation rate. So if we aren't ensuring that students are taking that assessment, we will also fall in terms of our ranking in the eyes of DESE and the state accountability rankings if we don't have participation rates that meet that threshold. So while it's not a graduation requirement,
It is still
an expectation.
still a participation requirement.
Yes.
And we do have the ELA MCAS coming up on March 25th and 26th at the high school, and all sophomores are expected to participate.
And that's how we're messaging.
Yes. And we are going to take a similar approach to what other schools have been doing, and also highlighting the different scholarship opportunities, the different benefits that the state is offering based on those scores, which we'll continue to do as we. So the last slide here just goes through our student experience survey data and the 2 questions that we've honed in on for the last 2 years. The first question is just around, I feel a part of my community at the school. And the second question being, my school is inclusive of all backgrounds and identities. Our target for both of those questions is to push towards 90%. What you see at the top is how our students responded to those 2 questions in the fall survey, and the second, obviously the 2 at the bottom are how they responded in the winter survey. They were pretty consistent in terms of those 2 surveys. We saw a slight dip on that first question going from the fall to the winter. But we would love to see both those numbers pushing 90%. Instead of having 8 out of every 10 students responding positively, we'd love to see that at 9 out of 10. Same thing we did last year, which we're looking at doing in March, and we're looking to align it with our Say Something Week, the week of the 14th, is to for those getting their feedback on what they're seeing in the data and how their peers are responding. So not necessarily them retaking the survey, but just looking at some of the different data points that we get from that survey, so they can just weigh in and tell us, why their peers may have responded a certain way, why certain percentages are good, why certain ones might be areas to improve upon. And Say Something Week is something that's aligned with Sandy Hook Promise, where they push that messaging of safety in schools, building inclusive spaces, making sure that people have those support systems and people to lean on. So we're going to hone in during that week on the questions that one is aligned with their mission, but also two, connect with the stuff that we want to with that survey. So when we're having those listening groups, we're going to be asking questions specific to the questions you see up here, but also aligned with the Sandy Hook Promise pushes for and promotes.
Great. Questions? Frank?
No, I just really am interested in that correlation between the diagnostic performance, especially as we're thinking about competency determination and when we had about how grades can shift from classroom to classroom.
So what I can definitely do tomorrow, because it's honestly timely and I think it works. We have a math department meeting tomorrow. I'll bring that question to them. We can sit down and we can, I'll tell them exactly what we're looking at in that correlation between where the kids might be scoring below grade level and how they're performing in those classes. And we'll see what they have for feedback. So right now we have 2 standard algebra teachers and then we have 2 honors algebra teachers. So just get feedback from all 4.
We have a unique in terms of budget. So while you're all here, we have a bunch of items we're acting on later on tonight. I just wanted to run through a few quick things. If you have a opinion or something you want to say about each thing, that would be helpful. If not, we'll just go right through it. So we're talking about school choice, a couple extra positions, potentially in the 6th grade, 10 positions, Steve and Natalie, 9th grade, 10 positions for next year. Pretty cool with that?
Yep.
Good. We were talking about increasing the sports fee from $149 to $199. It's been stagnant for 23 years. I've always been against it, but this might be the year to do it.
Agree.
Okay. We were talking about capping the virtual school enrollment. Pretty much where we're at now. Is that going to create any long-term?
The state allows, and your enrollment in the 2 Commonwealth virtual schools goes above 1%. It allows a school committee to cap the enrollment. It can't go below 1%, so the cap can be 1% or higher, somewhere between 1% and 2%. So that was just, it's timely in the discussion because if we're going to do anything, we have to get that vote to the state by the first week of March, I believe.
The percentage of our students who are currently enrolled.
We're at 1% now.
We're at 1%.
Yeah, 1.02.
Would be capped. Is that going to create a problem?
Across the entire district or by like high school, middle school?
It would be across the entire district.
It would be for the district.
Yeah. So you have 25 students right now in either the Greenfield Community Virtual School or Teka Academy across many grade levels.
They're expensive tuitions, clearly, yeah.
And we're at 1% right now.
We're over 1.
We have 25 students across all grade levels.
That tuition doesn't come from us though.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Yeah. Tuition is taken, it's not school choice.
It comes through
It's taken out of your chapter 70.
chapter 70.
So those 25 students, instead of going at, say, 5,000, which is school choice, they go more at the tuition rate for those schools.
I did not know that. So when a student leaves here and they go to Teka,
It costs.
They leave with, let's say, $14,000 to $17,000 worth of chapter 70.
okay.
Before you leave, if you can talk to us about lacrosse and softball, but just the other one thing I wanted to throw out there is for Mountain View and the high school, that last day of school, we're gonna, by nature, it just bumps to Tuesday half day, Monday full day. Both good with that. The rest of the district will be Monday half day, so we're gonna have to work out the busing issue, but we will. Good.
I had no chance to talk about it, but okay.
I know, but I just wanted to get it out. Yeah,
Are you increasing school choice for our grade levels too?
not this year. We're not looking at that specifically. Just the 10 and 10.
Grade 6 and grade 9.
Just curious.
Okay. Yeah, we have the numbers in terms of enrollment. We're looking at a little different strategy this year.
Okay.
Okay, Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Look forward to seeing you. Yeah, let's just move that up to the next item, if you don't mind. Can I take a motion?
I would take it if you guys have any questions.
I had also spoken to Mr. McGee, so.
Oh.
Either way, that's fine. You have the,
He's here. Let's get it.
you have the,
I take a motion to move.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you. 7.6, the next order of business, please. Motion made by William,
Second.
second by Amy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0.
So in your packet, good night, Manny. You have
Steve, leave that open, please.
Danny, I'll leave it open.
you have a memo to all of you and to me regarding 3 potential waivers, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and softball. Just breaking it down quickly, in both lacrosse programs, about 25 individuals who are looking to sign up for this spring. And they want to ensure, because both teams have had successful seasons over the last few years, they want to, the athletic department's looking to ensure run a JV team. And so some of those, if we keep, say, 20 on varsity, some of those 20 will probably play both. Play some JV time and some varsity time, but they would need to fill out with other numbers to make sure that they have the JV team. And Mr. Page, if there's anything that I've missed.
Yeah, just something Kevin always talks about, and just to reiterate, is no 8th grader is going to replace a high school kid. So there will not be a cut of a high school athlete to move up a middle school player.
What's going on with lacrosse? This is new. Why is this an issue now? And even softball, I would say. Any idea?
Softball, actually,
Softball's been
for waivers
for a while.
Yeah.
Numbers been low on and off for a while, where we've struggled to field that team. Lacrosse, I'm kind of hoping it's just a little bit of a dip. I can't speak to why those numbers might be a little bit lower at the youth levels coming up. But I would hope that we would not have to come to you for that waiver next year, and that we'd be able to replenish those numbers as we continue to go through.
Okay. Any other questions on the waivers?
Softball, there is that one element that, there's the possibility if they go below 15 players that they might have to have 8th graders play on varsity.
Right.
That happened last year.
And they're just trying to fill the varsity. We're not going to field the.
They would love to field the JV, but right now we only have
It's been
13.
a while since we've had a JV team. Unfortunately, I would love to see that be rebuilt as well.
But for now, it's just varsity.
We're just looking to fill out that varsity team right now.
Any other questions? No, I entertain a motion to approve the waivers, please.
Make a motion to approve the athletic waiver for boys and girls lacrosse and softball.
Motion made by Amy.
Yeah.
Second by Sarah. Discussion. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0.
One question.
Yeah.
So that cap on virtual enrollment,
Mhm.
is that effective immediately, or is that effective?
You cannot, it can't impact any current student who's enrolled. So the 25 stay.
I don't have a kid right now.
Would, if you said the cap was at 1%, we would not allow for any other students going forward to enroll in either the virtual schools unless we came down under that 1%,
Starting now.
starting now.
So it's immediate.
No new students.
No new students.
Anyone who's in it, right. Couldn't put another one in.
Now, the school committee also could look at, maybe we don't cap it at 1%, we cap it at 0.1%, whatever number that ends up being in terms of total enrollment. So that would allow for a few extra spots.
Yeah, so I am aware of at least one, if not two students who are currently on the wait list for TECA. So would this automatically remove them from that wait list?
That's a good question. Wait list is not necessarily included in the memo from DESI. It's currently enrolled students is what so I'd have to ask.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be able to advise our guidance department when these conversations come up and families ask.
Oh, it's a great point.
Well, what are the
Based on the-
chances they'll get pulled in this year? Does that happen?
Decent.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, usually when kids are on the wait list, it takes usually like about 1 to 2 months before they move into the.
I think we should allow them to move forward and then
You can put it in the
that.
motion, yeah.
Yeah. Would you recommend that? I don't want to, if these kids are on a track, they've already planned this is their plan. Just because they're over the number, I don't want to take it away from them.
I would recommend just putting a freeze on any additional students going forward and any students on the wait list stays on the wait list, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's only 2 on the wait list, you're saying?
I know of at least one. There might be a second. I can find that number out from guidance tomorrow. Yeah, we just might have to develop this whole 1% piece, develop some type of policy. So also we're in communication and I know where my numbers are and what to communicate to our staff,
Yeah. Well, if we set it at 1, I imagine won't dip below 1 at least through the year.
I'd be very surprised if it did, especially if we might now be going slightly over it with. We're already over. We're at 1.1.
We're 1.02 with 25 students. But that's based on the enrollment, the district.
Oh, yeah. So if enrollment decreases in the district and that number stays flat, we could actually increase our percentage. Right? Okay.
So as I said, the school committee basically the cap has to be between 1% and 2%, bless you. Because I believe the law right now dictates that it can be no more than 2%
Okay.
of a district's total enrollment.
Okay.
It's the first time we've hit over 1%
Yeah. Yeah. This
as a district.
nuance of the law, I was just unfamiliar with. Okay.
It's only because we were over 1%
Yeah.
at 02 that it triggered it. We've never been notified before.
Okay. So have you guys voted to formally put that cap in place tonight?
Today we will.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying,
Good to know that
I just need to understand like
on the wait
how
list.
this works so I can make sure so basically a family comes to our guidance department tomorrow and says we would like to apply to TECA, we would have to tell them
Capped.
you're capped as a district.
Correct.
So we would come under whatever the threshold is.
Do you have it by grade?
I can get it by grade, but right now I have it by district.
By grade too.
Oh, who are in those virtual?
We actually can get it by grade.
Have 5 kids graduating this year. That opens up a couple slots,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yeah, and we have a liaison now. It's nice to have a liaison for virtual schools.
And I'm not saying I'm looking to push kids for against it. It's just good to have the information so I can communicate that to our staff so they understand.
Just presenting is to make school more engaged here, not virtual.
That's right. All right, good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, thank you. Frank.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Night, Frank.
See you Wednesday. Capping off,
What's going on?
Hopping on.
popping off, everyone. You're not
Be there.
more Fazios for us. Thank you, Frank.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, we're gonna jump back into order. We have the FY 2026 budget development discussion.
Okay, so in front of you, again, to continue this conversation and remind everybody, after updating all the contractual obligations for FY 26, as well as increasing the special ed budget lines, a level services budget is an increase of approximately $3 million or an 8.57% increase. The past 3 years, the school department has requested on average a 3.93% increase for level services. Therefore, we know that we have some work to do to try to reduce that before bringing it forward to the town. So the chart here does group what those budget, next year's projected budget is in different categories. And of course, the bulk of it is your contractual obligations and increased IEP needs, the out-of-district transportation for those out-of-district tuitions. Those are really the big ticket items for next year. Going to the second page here, the chart below shows the reduction in level services request from the original $39,080,584 to $37,772,415. This is a reduction of $1,308,169, different items that we had, different strategies to reduce the budget down there. What I do want everyone to notice is when I plugged it into this spreadsheet here, that would be, if the school committee votes to bring this amount forward, that would be an increase to the school budget for next year of $1,777,289. There are still many moving pieces that can impact both this fiscal year as well as FY '26. We continue to talk about them. The next page is special ed. Sorry, sure.
So the 1,777,289 is a combination of the increase of chapter 70 that we're thinking we're going to get if the the governor's budget holds. Maybe that increases a little bit, but it's going to be somewhere in that neighborhood. And then the 1.5 million that overall would take us to that level services need. It's also reflecting, I think, the third or fourth page in your packet, which is taking a look at some of the efforts that all of you, in combination with the leadership team, have made to both free up revenue in next year's budget and look at maybe raising some revenue, as well as unfortunately looking at a few reductions that might be able to be taken within retirements and enrollment of certain courses. So that's where you can take your level services budget, which is the very first chart in your packet, looking at an 8.57% increase, and reduce that request by $1,308,169. If we were to implement these strategies, many of which are up for discussion. And this one is correct in terms of the utilization of school choice. It's got the 350 there. What was discussed a few meetings ago, which was the 400,000.
So the 1,777,289 reflects the 50.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be a 4.9% increase.
It's a significant effort, given that we started at requesting, we're looking at level service, not requesting. This is what we present to the town as possibly a level 1 services budget. And then obviously discussion continues with the town, as the town manager needs to submit a draft budget by April 1st, I believe.
Yeah, correct. And so, as I said, there are still moving pieces behind the scenes that unfortunately we just won't know for a few months, and things such as, special ed circuit breaker reimbursement. Will we qualify for the extraordinary relief? We won't know until probably April, whether we do or we don't. We did, as you can see, in 2023, we received $343,000. That would be great if we could get that. That helps us this year, which in turn would help us for next year as well. We don't know that answer. How much will we get in circuit breaker reimbursement in FY '26? We really won't know that until July, when that circuit breaker is done after the year closes out. I'm using the same figure for FY '26 projections as it currently is. I feel that that's conservative. We know that the expenses have gone up, but again, there's eligible expenditures in formulas behind the scenes, and I can't tell what those are until they get in there and they go through all of the services, and transportation is a component. So I'm using that figure there, assuming. What I will say is that in the projected revenue of that 1.6 million plus the projected carryover, 400,000, that's $2 million. Behind the scenes in the budget spreadsheets for next year, I've really used 1.6 million, if that makes sense. So I try to project out. So already if things stay the way they are now, I'm already projecting that in FY '27, we would be able to roll over about $400,000 if all stays the same. Another moving piece, we talked about the school choice. I thought I should put that into the chart for you so that you could see. We get a flat amount for each school choice student $5,000. There is a special ed component behind the scenes in the formula, and it depends on the services. If there are services for a school choice student that also gets special ed services, so it could change. But I felt safe just putting the minimum amount in there, knowing that that number will actually be larger. So I'm projecting out, if the school committee did vote in 20 additional slots, that the minimum aid that we would get, or minimum school choice revenue for next year, would be $285,000. And some of that is all in the, the strategies here that have been discussed already with the school committee.
So in the end, when we get further down to 7.4, we'll vote potentially on what we will call level 1 submission, and that will be the 3772 number.
It would be unless there are changes in.
Depending on our votes.
Right,
Right.
depending on the vote. So
Right.
if there's a change in school
Oh,
choice
right.
or there's a change in one of the
One of the
fees,
fees.
we'd have to calculate.
Okay, so we will talk about that a little more when we get further down. That's unless there are questions. Okay, Pam, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Discussion 7.1, discussion on participation in school choice program for the 2025-2026 school year.
So in connection or coordination with some of the budget discussions, we have looked at school choice a little differently, knowing that past years, we've looked specifically at some of the lower grade levels and specifically at where, as you look across in your packets, I should have said, you have a look at our enrollment statistics that we provided to DESE. We've looked at, where we've had lower enrollment at a particular grade level and said, okay, in that next year, we might be able to invite X number of students in. This year, as you heard from Mr. Page and at least in agreement with head nods from Mr. Pearson and Ms. Ojunga Andrew, we would recommend, and we do think what we can handle, adding school choice students at the middle level in grade 6 and at the high school level in grade 9. You have going into those grades, if you look here, the 5th grade of about 203 and the 8th grade going into 9th grade, you have about 197 students moving into those grades. In past years, we've seen numbers of grade levels that are well over 200, more in the, 215, 220, 225 range. Not too long ago, we had a 12th grade class that graduated, I believe, 225 students. So right now, our class enrollment 6 through 12 is much lower than it's been years past. You have the 203 coming in, which is just over 200, and you have the 206 and 7th grade is your two highest grade levels in 6 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the administrative team feels, the leadership team feels that we can handle that increase and certainly would offset, allow us to look at that school choice money and help us with some of the budget challenges.
Okay, questions, concerns?
Just have a quick question. Mrs. Santinello noted when she was here that it might make sense to offer some spots to possibly, I don't know, incoming 3rd graders. I don't know. Thing we would talk about.
3rd grade is at, or 2nd grade currently is at 170.
So in past years, I think the most we've ever done is 12, 8. How many have we
At a
offered in a
particular
year?
grade
One
level?
particular
I
year.
think one year that
But that wasn't at one grade level. I don't
Wasn't
think.
it?
It may have been the.
Total for the year, though.
Oh, for the year, I think.
Did that many?
Yeah, we've done 15, maybe in the start.
It's probably in that list.
good point.
So
Yeah.
the thought was 20 was an excessive amount, or not excessive, but a large amount already. They're in the later years, so they won't be here as long. And so we won't have as many students. I mean, I don't know, we could Scott's out of their grade levels. I just think this was the strategy that we looked at. And to not overburden the system, especially with the younger grades, and then we'd have them longer, although that's been our strategy in the past, so.
And there was,
Asking just
Yeah.
because she happened to.
Oh, it's a
It's
great,
just a different strategy. The other portion we're gonna look at is some of the grade level,
Enrollment.
yeah. And so that may come into play next year if we have other budgetary constraints that we may have to consider then too, so, which would boost their average class size, so. Yeah, okay.
Got it, thank you.
So with that, I would take a motion if someone would like to.
I make a motion to accept the for participation in school choice program for the 2025-2026 school year presented.
And offering 10 positions, the sixth grade level and 10 positions at the ninth grade level for the 25-26 school year, which you may have already said.
With 10 new positions in sixth grade and 10 new positions in ninth grade for the upcoming school.
Perfect. Motion made by Amy,
Second,
second by Sarah. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 0. Thank you.
thank you.
Discussion, increasing athletic fees, currently at 149, the go to 199, which would create additional revenue,
About 30,000.
$30,000. And the last time we've increased the sports fee, at least 23 years?
At least 23 years, yeah.
Questions, concerns? I take a motion for that then.
The athletic fee is one time per year, correct?
One per sport.
First sport.
Yes. We're one of the few probably in the area. There are others, I don't know them offhand, who have a set fee. Others will do it by sport. And so you may, yeah, they tier it. And so your more expensive sports have a higher user fee.
This would be for the 25-26 school year as well. I take a motion for that, please.
Just so I'm clear, so that means the family could potentially be paying $600
Yes, and many do
Per child, yeah.
per child.
per child.
If they play 3 sports, yeah.
I will make the motion, but I do think that in the future, it might be worth
Revisit.
revisiting and looking to see what some of our surrounding communities do in terms of the cap again, and just think, because you're right, if you have 2 kids or even 3 kids in high school, it could be an extreme expense for some families.
And we certainly don't want to, we want to encourage participation,
Right.
not put barriers in front of people.
Right.
So it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. Yeah.
So I make a motion to increase the athletic fee are we doing just for the upcoming school year, or is it?
It will be ongoing. So, but once we increase it, it stays there. So
Make a motion to increase the athletic fee from $149 per sport to $199 per sport,
Starting in the 25-26 school year.
starting in the upcoming 25-26 school year.
excellent. Motion made by Amy.
Second.
Second by William. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0.
Thank you.
We have a discussion on increasing the transportation fee currently at $270 per rider, capped at $540 per family. The proposal is to go to $300 per rider. And that would increase revenue by $17,400. Discussion.
Much to put on. Raising sports or the athletic fee, which would potentially be $600 for a family to add. Per child to add another $600 into family budgets, I think is too much to ask. And I don't see us getting. 70,000 isn't a small amount, but it's also not as substantial. half of it. Please.
Completely agree with Sarah. I think it can be debilitating for many families to face that bill every year, and
Sure.
raising the fee can be really harmful.
Yes.
And that's per child?
It would be capped at 600. So
Cap at
currently
two.
it's 270 per child. But it's capped at 540.
So if you have 3 kids, you only pay the two.
The two.
If you have 5 kids, you pay up to 2, and then that's it. That's your fee.
What I think is different about that is you're paying that starting potentially in kindergarten through,
Right.
Yeah, potentially.
as opposed to an athletic fee, which I still think is hard enough, but you're paying that 4 years. It's more of a finite amount of time as opposed to potentially K to 12 for a child.
Yeah.
And like we've talked about, we've made great strides with sidewalks in our community, but we still don't have
Walkable school.
walkable schools.
Yeah.
Sure don't.
For all families who live within 2 miles, so I think that's a tough one. I'm not.
Okay, I would take a motion anyway, and then we can vote against if you want. So take a motion to increase the fee, please.
Move to increase the transportation fee to $300 with a cap of $600 per family for the academic year 25-26.
Motion made by Sarah. You don't have to second, you can if you want. William, seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay.
Nay. Motion fails 0-4. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, next on the agenda. We have a vote for the we have approval of 2 memorandum of understandings with the ELEA.
So you have, I believe at your places, we have 2 drafts of memoranda of understanding. One is looking at the professional development money that's set aside each year for members of Unit A and members of Unit E. You're reimbursed up to 650 or up to 450 for coursework, workshops, and so forth that are approved. This would be for next school year unless I'm sorry, sorry about that. I think I passed all of them out. Don't have one. No, I
Okay. Share with you.
have it up here. So that would, the first one that deals with professional development, that would for next year yield $126,500. We'd free up that amount of money in next year's budget. And then the second memorandum of understanding is around extra days that our counselors across the district work, and it's needed. None of this is done without some loss. So we take 10 extra days, 5 in the beginning before the school year, 5 at the end of the school year with their administration, and do a lot of needed work and reduce that to 5 for the next school year. And so it could be 3 at the beginning of before the school year and 2 at the end of the year. And then that extra work would really fall to the administrators to complete. And so the ELEA Executive Board, in discussions with me, we've come to a tentative agreement on both of those. That would yield 26,000.
Questions, concerns?
So the combination of the 2 would give us.
What's that? 152.5?
Mhm.
Yep.
And I was an English major.
Nice work.
Pam confirmed it.
I did it in my head, Mr. Strode.
So I would take a motion for the first one to temporarily suspend the $650 for unit A and the $450 for unit E of individual professional development reimbursement for the 2025-2026 school year.
So moved.
Yeah, that'll work. Motion made by William.
Good.
I set you up for that. Made by William,
Second.
second by Sarah. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed nay. That carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll find that. And then a second motion to temporarily reduce the ELPS guidance counselors
Additional days.
additional days from 10 to 5 for the 2025-2026 school year.
For guidance and adjustment counselors.
Yes.
Yes.
So moved.
Motion made by William,
Second.
second by Sarah. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed nay. Carries 4-0.
I just think it's important to note that this is unfortunate.
Absolutely. This is the group that just left here will do absorb that work. And it's also a hit to folks that have been doing this work for a number of years. They're doing it well.
Very much so.
I think everybody in a challenging situation is trying to come together and be collaborative and creative. And so we've been appreciative of that. Hoping that continues and has been shown by the town to do the same thing. And so hopefully tomorrow, as we're meeting with them, we're continuing that same effort.
Okay, 7.4. FY26 budget submission to the town manager, looking for a vote on that. 37,789,815.
No, before you do that, the number now in terms of reducing the request, the level services request of 3085458, right?
305.
3 million. 85,458. The number we're
It should be the 37,772 plus the,
Minus the 17.
minus, so right now it's what we've been able to free up with the additional reductions. Remember, that's part two.
Could I just say that?
no, because we're gonna request it still.
Because you just took off the 17,000, so it's
Yes, we have to ask for more. We have
1.2.
to add it in. Don't subtract it.
Well, I did in terms of the strategies, because it's basically you've reduced the request by no longer 1.3, it's now 1.290769.
Yes, we have to add it.
Right.
Right, so it's 37,789,815.
Oh, because you added it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Just gonna double check that.
just looking what you're asking.
I added it, so you had already subtracted, I was adding it back in. And we got to the same place.
We did.
789815.
At least two ways to get there,
Yes,
if not more.
Okay. Agreed.
okay. So with all of that discussion, so as we said, this will be a level one. In the past, we've submitted a final budget proposal. We're gonna acknowledge that this is the level one because we will acknowledge that there is still work to be done and that this will probably not be our final budget. I believe we'll have more information tomorrow, and then we'll continue to work on it based on information that continues to come in. But as of now, the request would be for the school budget for the 25-26 school year, $37,789,815. And
I will have to make some updates in Munis tomorrow and then bring that forward, which Gordon will submit to,
okay,
Which is inclusive of the savings from the two MOUs,
yep.
Right.
yes,
inclusive of the expansion of school choice,
yes,
inclusive of the increase of the athletic fee.
yes.
And it's also inclusive
Guidance day.
of
Guidance, yep,
6 positions
Right.
being reduced.
yes.
And that's through a combination of retirements and unfortunately, low enrollment in certain electives,
Mhm.
as well as two positions that currently have long-term subs and won't post for full-time staff. I mean, I think that needs to be part of the discussion tomorrow, is that we're already committing to reducing 6 positions.
Yes.
In addition to working with our teachers to be creative and free up other money, as well as the votes that you took today in terms of school choice and raising fees. So we're trying to leave no avenue uninspected, I guess, if that's the proper way of saying it.
Unexplored.
Thank you. Unexplored, that's better.
I mean, you can inspect the avenues too.
Sure. Exploring is better.
Yeah, way more fun.
No pathway. It's an avenue, it's probably been explored.
Any comments, questions? If not, I'd take a motion for level 1 budget submission. Please.
To submit the level 1 budget to the town manager for fiscal year 2026 as presented.
Just the dollar amount,
Oh, that's
37,789,815.
37,789,815.
Motion made by Sarah,
Second.
second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We've done the virtual school already.
Discussed it.
Oh, we didn't.
Oh, we didn't vote. Okay. Did we talk about it enough?
Sure. I think the overview, the reason that we were alerted by DESI is because we're just over 1% of our enrollment. The statute actually caps it at 2%. No district can have more than 2% of their entire district enrollment go to virtual schools. So once over 1%, school committees have the opportunity to put a cap in place. The discussion we had with Mr. Page also let us know that currently we have some students, possibly 2, who may be on the wait list of one of the virtual schools.
What would you recommend for that?
If they allow us to put a motion forward where we allow, you have to allow all students.
Yeah.
If we can add to the motion that any students who are currently on the wait list would be exempted from that cap, then I can certainly talk to the DESI liaison and make sure that that's understood, or do we have to?
When you look at the appendix B,
Mhm.
first paragraph, that letter to the commissioner, doesn't that state this will be in effect as of the 25-26 school year?
Oh, then that would be fine.
So if a student got enrolled
At the end of this year,
academic year,
they'd be fine.
they would still be like, I don't know, grandfathered in?
Yeah. So that's all,
Were you reading that, Sarah?
it's the template letter that I
And
send.
you send back. That's how I interpret that sentence.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a great catch. Thank you. Basically similar to votes you've taken this evening, we're putting it on the next school year.
Next school year.
And then it would
So
go
anybody
on in
waitlisted,
perpetuity, though. We wouldn't have to renew it. Can we?
you may have to look at it, as long as we stay over 1%, we probably keep that happening, but you may have to renew it each year.
If they publish it.
Yeah. Looks like in the chart of districts who've done it. Have to. Oh, you may have to revisit it each year.
But we should be okay to on the wait list because
Right.
they would be rolled in.
Correct.
And it says they cannot be compelled to withdraw because of this vote.
Right.
To withdraw, but that's the
The
same.
students who are
Getting-
currently enrolled,
Mhm.
we
No,
can't.
no, but the
we-
waiting list is different.
Well, if you put in the motion that it's for the 25-26 school year, which is what this letter
Says.
template letter is saying, then we're fine. Because if they get in, they get in. So you didn't cap it until the following year.
Mhm. And then they would see.
Yeah, so the cap would be implemented for that year. Okay, that works.
If they said it's true that it's typically only a month or two, they've been on the waiting list,
Then
they
they'll
should
get
be.
Yeah.
Possibly March or April.
Okay. Motion?
Place an enrollment restriction of 1% on the Commonwealth Virtual School effective in the 25-26 school year.
Motion made by Sarah,
Second.
second by Amy. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0. Thank you. We didn't do the waiver, did we do the waiver?
We did the waiver,
voted on it?
You voted on it.
voted on it.
Okay, superintendent's mid-cycle formative self-assessment.
So in your packets, I have, put together, much self-assessments. A lot of it is what being conducted, not only by the schools, but in our previous school committee meeting in February, presented at the district level. I also put together, as I've done in the past, folders in the, joint, Google Drive. Stroller, do you have access to that?
No, but I will have it this week.
Which I need to get access on this. So I can go through highlights, or if people want to meet with me between now and the next school committee meeting, I can answer questions, whatever the committee's pleasure is.
I'm happy to review it. And ask questions if I have them.
Okay.
But that's just.
It's unfortunate, Gordon, because you always get, this comes at the end of the longest meetings we ever have.
Right, but it's-
amount of work that you always do for the district, we kind of just like, all right, thanks, Gordon, but please know that we certainly acknowledge
No,
all that you
and I
do.
appreciate that, but I think obviously it needs to come after the schools have presented and you have a lot of the data currently in front of you.
Right.
So that then it's actually meeting something in terms of different things. But I mean, it goes through, as I always have done, it goes through our SMART goals, and then it goes through the standards. Some of it becomes a little bit repetitive because, you know, it's something that's done for a SMART goal. If they're aligned to the standards, which they should be, you're going to see that bullet point again. But certainly I can go into more detail and questions on an individual basis or committee basis if people would like to do it that way.
Yeah, why don't we each review, and if anyone has things they want to discuss with superintendent, you are certainly welcome to do so, and then bring it back. Or is that not necessary?
No, we can bring
Bring it back in 2 weeks? Okay.
That way you vote on it.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, it's good. What? That's good. Everybody's good. Move on, or we'll call it night. All right, it's been a good productive meeting. Appreciate everyone's time. Jamie, thank you for your efforts tonight. Huh?
You have to vote on that.
No vote.
Oh, sorry.
Did you want to adjourn?
We're gonna adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I would take a motion to adjourn.
Had a long night.
Without further delay.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by William. Second by Amy. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That carries 4-0. Thank you. We are adjourned.